In the heart of downtown Chicago on a chilly autumn afternoon, something unexpected unfolded that would soon grip the entire city. The cold wind swept through the streets as people hurried about their day, sipping coffee or scrolling on their phones. On a worn-out park bench near a busy coffee shop, a homeless black woman sat quietly, her tattered coat barely shielding her from the biting cold. Her name was Maya Johnson, and she had been living on the streets for years, battling hardships most couldn't imagine. Beside her sat a young boy, no older than 8, with tousled blonde hair and wide, curious eyes. He was white, wearing a slightly oversized hoodie and clutching a granola bar Maya had shared with him. They weren't family, but there they were, two strangers sitting together in silence, sharing what little they had. To passers-by, though, this scene looked anything but ordinary. A middle-aged man walking his dog stopped abruptly when he noticed them. At first he squinted, trying to make sense of what he saw. Then, pointing at the pair, he shouted loudly enough for everyone around to hear, "Hey, what are you doing with that kid?" His voice carried across the street, turning heads instantly. People slowed down, some stopping completely to stare. Within moments, a small crowd began to gather, whispering among themselves. Someone pulled out their phone to record the scene while another called the police. Panic spread quickly as one person in the crowd yelled, "She's kidnapping him!" The accusation hung heavy in the air, sending shockwaves through the bystanders. Mothers clutched their children closer and men crossed their arms, glaring suspiciously at Maya. No one seemed willing to listen as Maya tried to defend herself, her voice trembling but firm. "I didn't do anything wrong," she pleaded. "He just came up to me. I'm not hurting him." But her words fell on deaf ears. The crowd only grew angrier, fueled by fear and assumptions. One woman stepped forward, shaking her head. "You expect us to believe that? Look at him, he's scared," she said, pointing at the boy who was now clinging tightly to Maya's leg. Tears streamed down his face as he cried out, "No, don't take her away. She helped me." Despite his desperate pleas, the situation escalated further. Police officers arrived within minutes, their presence adding to the tension. Without hesitation, they approached Maya, demanding answers. She tried explaining again, her hands shaking as she spoke. "I swear I didn't hurt him. He was alone, hungry. I gave him food, that's all." But her explanation wasn't enough. In the eyes of the law and the crowd, she was guilty until proven innocent. As the officers cuffed her and led her away, Ethan screamed louder, reaching out for her. "Please don't let them take her," he sobbed, his tiny voice cracking under the weight of emotion. Some in the crowd softened, exchanging uneasy glances, but others remained convinced of their initial judgment. Phones continued to record every moment, capturing the chaos and confusion. By evening, the video of the incident had gone viral. Social media platforms buzzed with outrage and debate. News outlets picked up the story, labeling it yet another case of racial profiling gone horribly wrong. Comment sections exploded with opinions, some defending Maya, calling her arrest unjust and racially motivated, while others sided with the accusers, questioning how a homeless woman ended up with a child who clearly wasn't hers. For Maya, the hours following her arrest felt endless. Alone in a cold interrogation room, she replayed the events in her mind, struggling to understand how things had spiraled so out of control. She thought back to earlier that day, when she'd spotted the boy wandering aimlessly through the streets. He looked lost, his eyes red from crying. When he finally approached her, offering her a crumpled dollar bill, she couldn't turn him away. Instead, she smiled gently and offered him half of the granola bar she'd found earlier. They talked for hours, sharing stories and laughter, finding comfort in each other's company despite their vastly different lives. Now, here she was, accused of a crime she hadn't committed. As the night wore on, Maya wondered if anyone would ever believe her side of the story. Would people see past her circumstances and recognize the humanity in her actions? Or would she become another statistic, another victim of prejudice and misunderstanding? Meanwhile, Ethan was taken into protective custody, where social workers attempted to calm him down and learn more about his family. Through tears, he explained that he had run away from home after an argument with his stepfather. Scared and hungry, he wandered the streets until he found Maya. "She wasn't scary," he insisted. "She was nice. She told me everything would be okay. Ethan's words painted a picture far different from the one portrayed in the viral video. Yet public opinion remained divided. For many, the image of a homeless black woman with a white child was too jarring to dismiss without suspicion. And so the investigation pressed on, leaving Maya's fate hanging precariously in the balance. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning of a story that would challenge perceptions, expose hidden truths, and ultimately remind the world of the power of compassion even in the unlikeliest of places. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city, Ethan sat in a small, sterile room at a local child welfare office. His cheeks were still streaked with tears, and his hands trembled as he clutched a cup of juice someone had given him. The social worker assigned to his case, a kind woman with soft eyes and a gentle voice, tried her best to comfort him. She knelt down to his level, speaking slowly and calmly. "Hey there," she said, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "I know this has been really scary for you, but I promise we're here to help. Can you tell me what happened today?" Ethan sniffled, looking up at her with big, watery eyes. He hesitated for a moment, then began to speak, his voice shaky but determined. "I ran away from home," he admitted. "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just wanted to get away." The social worker nodded encouragingly. "That's okay, you can tell me everything. Why did you run away?" He looked down at the floor, fidgeting with the edge of his hoodie. "My stepdad was yelling at me again. He gets mad about little things, like if I forget to do my chores or spill something. This time it was because I left my bike outside overnight. We started arguing and I got so upset that I just left." His words came out in bursts, each sentence punctuated by a deep breath as though recounting the events drained him emotionally. "I didn't know where to go. I walked around for hours and then I saw her, the lady on the bench. She looked sad like me. I thought maybe she'd understand." The social worker listened intently, jotting notes on her clipboard. "And what happened when you talked to her?" Ethan's expression softened slightly, a flicker of warmth returning to his eyes. "She smiled at me. No one had smiled at me all day. I gave her $1. I didn't have much, but I wanted to help. And you know what? She shared her food with me instead. We sat there together talking about stars and stuff. She said the stars are always there, even when you can't see them. That made me feel better." His story painted a vivid picture of connection, not coercion, not manipulation, but genuine human kindness. Yet outside the walls of the welfare office, public opinion continued to swirl like a storm. Social media threads buzzed with heated debates. Some commenters dismissed Ethan's account entirely, accusing Maya of using drugs or psychological tricks to gain his trust. Others pointed fingers at systemic racism, arguing that her homelessness and race played a significant role in how quickly she was labeled a threat. Meanwhile, authorities faced mounting pressure to locate Ethan's biological family. They soon discovered that his mother had passed away 2 years earlier after a prolonged illness. Since then, Ethan had been living with his stepfather, a wealthy businessman known for his flashy lifestyle and expensive tastes. His name wasn't widely recognized, but those familiar with high society circles whispered about his temper and volatile behavior behind closed doors. When detectives reached out to the stepfather, he initially claimed to be unaware that Ethan was missing. Over the phone, his tone sounded casual, almost dismissive. "Oh, he probably just wandered off," he said. "Kids do that sometimes. He'll come back when he gets hungry." It wasn't until news of the viral video reached him that he agreed to meet with investigators in person. By the next morning, the stepfather arrived at the police station, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit and designer shoes. His polished exterior contrasted sharply with the disarray surrounding the case. Reporters swarmed him, shoving microphones in his face and firing questions about his relationship with Ethan. Flashes popped as cameras captured every movement, every twitch of his lips. "I'm relieved my son is safe," he declared, his voice smooth and practiced. "But frankly, I'm appalled by the actions of this woman. Whatever her intentions, taking advantage of a vulnerable child is unacceptable." His statement drew mixed reactions. While some applauded his apparent concern for Ethan's well-being, others noticed cracks in his composure. Anonymous sources began leaking details about his past. Financial records showing suspicious withdrawals during periods when Ethan claimed he'd been locked out of the house, neighbors recounting heated arguments, and even allegations of substance abuse. None of these claims could be verified immediately, but they planted seeds of doubt in the minds of those following the case. Back at the welfare office, Ethan grew increasingly frustrated. Every adult he encountered seemed more interested in dissecting the situation than listening to him. When asked about his stepfather, he shrugged, avoiding direct eye contact. "He works a lot," Ethan muttered. "Sometimes he yells, but he doesn't hit me or anything. I don't feel happy at home anymore." These words resonated deeply with the social worker, who knew firsthand how emotional neglect could leave scars just as painful as physical abuse. She promised Ethan that they would figure things out together, assuring him that he wouldn't have to return to a place where he felt unsafe. As the investigation unfolded, tensions escalated. Further, Maya remained in custody, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Despite Ethan's insistence that she had done nothing wrong, the legal system moved forward cautiously, unwilling to overlook any possibility of foul play. Protesters gathered outside the police station, holding signs that read "Justice for Maya" and "Stop criminalizing compassion." Their chants echoed through the streets, drawing attention from national news outlets. Behind the scenes, Maya's attorney, an impassioned young lawyer named Jasmine Carter, worked tirelessly to build a defense. Jasmine believed wholeheartedly in Maya's innocence and understood the broader implications of the case. She argued that the charges stemmed not from evidence but from prejudice, urging the court to consider the full context before passing judgment. For Maya, the days blurred together in a haze of fear and frustration. She replayed her encounter with Ethan over and over in her mind, wondering if she should have done something differently. Had she been too trusting? Too naive? Or was this simply the cost of being kind in a world quick to judge? Amidst the chaos, one question lingered in everyone's minds: where did the truth lie? Was Maya truly guilty of wrongdoing, or was she a victim of circumstance? A compassionate soul caught in the crossfire of societal biases. And what about Ethan? Could anyone untangle the web of emotions and accusations to uncover what was truly best for him? Unbeknownst to anyone, a pivotal moment loomed on the horizon, one that would change the course of their lives forever. By the third day of Maya's detention, the story had exploded into a full-blown media circus. News vans lined the streets outside the police station, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like metallic trees. Reporters jostled for position, microphones in hand, desperate to capture sound bites from anyone willing to talk. Protesters filled the sidewalks, holding signs that read, "Free her now," and "Compassion isn't a crime." The air buzzed with tension, a mix of anger, hope, and uncertainty. Inside the station, detectives worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle. They reviewed surveillance footage from nearby businesses, interviewed witnesses, and cross-referenced statements from both Maya and Ethan. Yet, despite their efforts, no concrete evidence emerged to support the kidnapping allegations. Every lead seemed to circle back to one undeniable truth: Maya hadn't forced Ethan to stay with her. He had chosen to sit beside her, to trust her when no one else did. Meanwhile, the public debate raged on. Talk shows invited experts to weigh in, each offering their own interpretation of the events. Some argued that Maya's actions were innocent, a random act of kindness in a world sorely lacking compassion. Others remained skeptical, pointing to stereotypes about homelessness and race as reasons to question her motives. Online forums became battlegrounds, with commenters hurling accusations and defenses alike. It was chaos, a tidal wave of opinions crashing against the fragile shores of reason. Amidst this whirlwind, Ethan's stepfather made his first public appearance since the incident. Dressed impeccably in an expensive suit, he strode confidently toward the cameras, his expression calm but calculated. Flanked by lawyers, he addressed the crowd with practiced ease. "I'm just glad my son is safe," he said, his voice steady. "But let's be clear, This woman took advantage of him during a vulnerable moment. That's not okay, regardless of her intentions. His words struck a chord with some viewers, who nodded along, agreeing that any interaction between a child and a stranger warranted scrutiny. But others saw through the polished facade. Neighbors began coming forward, sharing stories of late-night arguments and slammed doors. One woman recounted seeing Ethan sitting alone on the porch late at night, shivering without a jacket because, she claimed, his stepfather refused to let him back inside after a disagreement. These whispers gained traction when anonymous sources leaked financial records showing suspicious withdrawals coinciding with periods when Ethan said he'd been locked out of the house. The leaks painted a troubling picture of a household where control outweighed care. Still, without hard proof, authorities hesitated to act. For now, the focus remained on Maya, the homeless woman accused of a crime she swore she didn't commit. As the hours ticked by, Maya's attorney, Jasmine Carter, worked around the clock to build a defense. A fiery advocate for justice, Jasmine believed wholeheartedly in Maya's innocence. She knew the case wasn't just about one woman. It was about challenging systemic biases that judged people based on their circumstances rather than their character. Armed with Ethan's testimony and mounting public support, she filed motions to have the charges dropped, arguing that there was no evidence of wrongdoing. Jasmine also reached out to local activists and community leaders, asking them to amplify Maya's story. Together, they organized rallies and fundraisers drawing attention to the broader issues of racial profiling and the criminalization of poverty. Supporters poured in from all corners of the city, sharing meals, donating clothes, and offering words of encouragement to Maya's family. For the first time in years, Maya felt seen, not as a statistic or a stereotype, but as a human being worthy of dignity and respect. Back at the welfare office, Ethan continued to open up about his life. At home, his conversations with the social worker revealed a boy caught between grief and fear. He missed his mother dearly, often talking about her in hushed tones. "She used to tuck me in every night," he said once, his voice barely above a whisper. "Even when I was scared, she made me feel safe." But since her passing, things had changed. Ethan described feeling invisible, like his presence was more of an inconvenience than a priority. His stepfather, while not physically abusive, ruled the household with an iron fist. Rules were enforced harshly, emotions dismissed quickly. Arguments escalated into shouting matches, leaving Ethan too afraid to speak his mind. The social worker listened intently, piecing together a portrait of a fractured home. She knew that reuniting Ethan with his stepfather might not be in his best interest, but proving neglect would require more than anecdotal evidence. She quietly urged investigators to dig deeper, hoping to uncover the truth hidden beneath layers of privilege and power. Then on the morning of the fourth day, something extraordinary happened. As protesters chanted outside the police station and reporters scrambled for updates, a sleek black Lamborghini roared into view. The car screeched to a halt, its engine growling like a beast ready to pounce. Crowds parted as the driver stepped out, a tall, striking woman dressed in designer clothing and oversized sunglasses. She removed her shades, revealing piercing eyes that scanned the scene with quiet determination. "I'm here for my nephew," she announced, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "And I want to know why an innocent woman is being treated like a criminal for showing kindness to a child in need." Her arrival sent shockwaves through the crowd. Cameras flashed furiously as reporters rushed to identify her. Within minutes, it became clear who she was, the estranged aunt of Ethan, the sister of his late mother. She had flown in from Los Angeles, upon hearing about the incident, determined to fight for the boy she loved but hadn't seen in years. Her name carried weight, though she preferred to keep it private for now. What mattered most was her message, one of love, accountability, and justice. As she walked into the police station, flanked by lawyers carrying stacks of legal documents, the tide began to turn. This wasn't just about Maya anymore. It was about Ethan, his future, and the adults responsible for shaping it. For Maya, the sight of the Lamborghini pulling up felt surreal. She couldn't have imagined that such a dramatic entrance would become the turning point in her life. But as the pieces fell into place, one thing became clear. The truth was finally beginning to surface. And with it came the possibility of war. Redemption. For Maya, for Ethan, and perhaps even for those willing to listen. The moment the woman stepped out of the Lamborghini, everything changed. Her presence commanded attention, not just because of her striking appearance or the luxury car she drove, but because of the sheer force of her conviction. She moved with purpose, her heels clicking against the pavement as she pushed through the crowd outside the police station. Reporters shouted questions at her, their cameras flashing like strobe lights, but she didn't slow down. Her focus was singular. Ethan. Inside the station, she introduced herself to the officers, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here for my nephew," she said, sliding a stack of legal documents across the counter. "And I want answers, starting with why an innocent woman is being treated like a criminal." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. They had dealt with difficult situations before, but this was something else entirely. Here was a woman who clearly meant business, someone unafraid to challenge authority when it mattered most. As she waited for them to process her paperwork, she turned to face the reporters who had followed her inside. Microphones were thrust toward her, and she didn't shy away. Instead, she leaned in, speaking directly to the camera. "My sister, Ethan's mother, trusted me to look out for him if anything ever happened to her, and now, I'm stepping up to do exactly that. But let me be clear, what's happening here isn't justice, it's fear masquerading as law." Her words resonated deeply, not just with the crowd outside, but with the millions watching online. For days, people had debated whether Maya was guilty or innocent, whether racial bias played a role, or if the system had failed yet another vulnerable person. Now, here was someone willing to cut through the noise and demand accountability. Her arrival shifted the narrative, forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about privilege, power, and compassion. Once the initial frenzy died down, she sat down with detectives to provide more context. She explained that she hadn't been part of Ethan's life recently, due to a bitter falling out with his stepfather. Their disagreement stemmed from concerns about how Ethan was being raised. "I tried to intervene," she admitted, her voice tinged with regret. "But my sister always brushed it off, saying I was overreacting. After she passed, I thought, maybe it wasn't my place anymore. I stayed away. That was my mistake." Her honesty struck a chord. It wasn't easy for her to admit fault, especially in front of strangers, but she knew it was necessary. This wasn't about blame. It was about fixing what had broken. She vowed to make things right, for Ethan, for her late sister, and even for herself. With legal guardianship temporarily granted, she requested to see Ethan immediately. When they brought him into the room, his eyes lit up the moment he recognized her. "Auntie," he cried, running into her arms. She hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply held onto each other, two people reunited after years of silence and heartache. When they finally pulled apart, she knelt down to his level, brushing his hair back gently. "Hey, champ," she said softly. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you. But I'm here now, okay? We're going to figure this out together." Ethan nodded, clutching her hand tightly. He didn't need to say anything. His trust in her was evident. In that moment, she realized just how much work lay ahead. Rebuilding their relationship wouldn't happen overnight, but she was ready to try. For him. Meanwhile, the investigation into Ethan's home life intensified. Armed with fresh leads provided by the aunt, private investigators dug deeper into the stepfather's past. What they uncovered painted a troubling picture. Financial records revealed suspicious withdrawals during periods when Ethan claimed he'd been locked out of the house. Neighbors came forward with stories of heated arguments and slammed doors. One even admitted to hearing the stepfather shout threats late at night. These revelations added fuel to the fire, prompting authorities to take action. The stepfather, once confident in his polished exterior, began to crack under pressure. During a follow-up interview with detectives, his composure faltered. His answers grew defensive, his tone increasingly agitated. When pressed about inconsistencies in his story, he struggled to keep his cool. By the end of the session, it was clear that his version of events didn't align with the growing body of evidence. Public opinion shifted dramatically as new details emerged. Social media threads buzzed with outrage, condemning the stepfather's behavior while praising the aunt for stepping up. Supporters of Maya doubled down on their calls for justice, demanding that all charges against her be dropped immediately. Even some skeptics began to reconsider their stance, acknowledging that the case might have been mishandled from the start. Jasmine Carter, Maya's attorney, seized the opportunity to push harder for her client's release. With mounting evidence pointing to Ethan's unstable home environment and no proof of wrongdoing on Maya's part, she argued that continuing to detain her served no purpose. "This isn't just about clearing her name," Jasmine told the court. "It's about recognizing the humanity in all of us, the ability to show kindness without judgment." By the fifth day, the tide had fully turned. A judge reviewed the case and agreed to drop all charges against Maya, citing insufficient evidence and procedural errors. As she walked out of the courthouse, flanked by supporters chanting her name, Maya broke down in tears. It wasn't just relief she felt, it was gratitude. For the first time in years, she felt seen and valued as a human being, not dismissed because of her circumstances. But the story didn't end there. The aunt approached Maya afterward, offering her a lifeline. "You saved my nephew when no one else did," she said. "And I won't forget that. If you're open to it, I'd like to hire you as a live-in nanny for Ethan. You've already proven you care about him, and I think having you around would help him heal." Maya hesitated, unsure if she deserved such generosity. She had spent so long believing she wasn't worthy of trust or kindness. But Ethan ran up to her, tugging on her sleeve. "Please, say yes," he pleaded. "You're the only one who understands me." In that moment, Maya realized that sometimes second chances come in unexpected forms. She accepted the offer, knowing it wouldn't be easy, but also knowing it could change everything. For Ethan, the reunion with his aunt marked the beginning of a new chapter. With her support and Maya's unwavering kindness, he started to rebuild his sense of security. Together they formed a bond rooted in resilience and love, proving that even in the darkest moments, hope can shine through. The days following Maya's release from custody marked a turning point, not just for her but for everyone involved in the case. The aunt wasted no time in taking charge of Ethan's future, determined to ensure that his life would never again be overshadowed by fear or neglect. With the help of private investigators and legal experts, she delved deeper into the stepfather's past, uncovering details that painted an even darker picture than anyone had anticipated. Financial records revealed not only suspicious withdrawals, but also large sums spent on alcohol and luxury items during times when Ethan claimed he'd been locked out of the house. Neighbors who had previously hesitated to speak came forward with chilling accounts, stories of late-night shouting matches, slammed doors, and what sounded like threats directed at Ethan. One neighbor recounted hearing the stepfather yell, "If you can't follow the rules, maybe you don't deserve to live here," through thin apartment walls. These revelations were presented in court as part of the aunt's emergency petition for full guardianship. The stepfather, once so polished and composed, crumbled under cross-examination. His carefully constructed facade shattered as lawyers pressed him about his behavior. When asked why Ethan had mentioned being locked outside overnight, he stammered, trying to downplay the incidents. "It was discipline," he insisted. "Kids need structure." But the judge wasn't convinced. Neither were the social workers, who noted Ethan's withdrawn demeanor and frequent complaints of feeling unsafe at home. By the end of the hearing, the decision was clear. The stepfather would no longer have any custodial rights over Ethan. Full guardianship was awarded to the aunt, who vowed to create a stable and loving environment for her nephew. For the stepfather, the verdict was devastating. Once a man accustomed to power and control, he now found himself stripped of both. Publicly humiliated and legally defeated, he retreated from the spotlight, disappearing back into the shadows of privilege that had shielded him for so long. While some might have felt sympathy for his fall from grace, most agreed it was a necessary reckoning, a reminder that wealth and status cannot excuse cruelty or neglect. Meanwhile, Maya began adjusting to her new role as Ethan's nanny, Raki. First, she struggled with self-doubt, questioning whether she truly deserved such an opportunity after years of living on the streets. But the aunt reassured her, reminding her that kindness and resilience were qualities money couldn't buy. "You've already done more for Ethan than anyone else has in a long time," the aunt told her one evening, as they sat together in the kitchen. "He trusts you. That means something." Ethan, too, played a crucial role in helping Maya settle in. Every morning he greeted her with a wide smile, eager to share breakfast or play games before school. On weekends they explored the neighborhood together, visiting parks and libraries where Maya could rediscover the simple joys she'd missed while homeless. Slowly but surely, she began to believe in herself again, finding strength in the connections she'd formed. The transformation wasn't immediate, it never is, but it was undeniable. Ethan started opening up more, sharing stories about his mother and expressing emotions he'd kept bottled up for years. He laughed freely now, his laughter filling the house like sunlight breaking through clouds. And when sadness crept in, as it sometimes did, Maya was there to comfort him, offering words of encouragement and reminders of the stars she often talked about, the ones that stayed constant even in the darkest nights. Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were still moments of tension, especially when Ethan thought about his stepfather or wondered why his mother hadn't intervened sooner. But the aunt handled these conversations with care, framing them as lessons in forgiveness and growth, rather than blame. She encouraged Ethan to write letters to his mother, pouring out his feelings onto paper as a way to process his grief. Sometimes Maya joined him, sharing her own memories of loss and survival. Together they created a space where vulnerability was welcomed, not feared. Outside their little world, public interest in the case began to wane. News outlets moved on to other headlines, and social media threads grew quieter. But those who had followed the story closely didn't forget. Many continued to advocate for systemic change, using Maya and Ethan's ordeal as a catalyst to address issues like racial profiling, homelessness, and child welfare reform. Support groups sprang up across the city, offering resources and solidarity to families navigating similar challenges. For Maya, this newfound sense of purpose extended beyond her role as a nanny. Encouraged by the aunt, she enrolled in community college classes, pursuing a degree in social work. Her goal was simple yet profound: to help others who had been overlooked or dismissed by society. "I know what it's like to feel invisible," she told Ethan one night as they stargazed in the backyard. "And I want to make sure no one else has to feel that way." Ethan nodded, leaning against her shoulder. "You're not invisible to me," he said softly. "You're my hero." Those words meant everything to Maya. They reminded her of how far she'd come, not just physically from the cold park benches to a warm home, but emotionally, from despair to hope. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she also knew she wasn't alone anymore. She had Ethan, who saw her for who she truly was, and the aunt who believed in her potential. Together they were building something beautiful, a family forged not by blood but by trust, compassion, and resilience. As weeks turned into months, the scars of the past began to fade, replaced by brighter memories. The Lamborghini driving. Aunt became a fixture in Ethan's life, attending parent-teacher conferences and cheering him on at soccer games. Maya, too, found her place in the community, volunteering at local shelters and mentoring other women transitioning out of homelessness. Their shared journey proved that healing wasn't linear. It was messy, unpredictable, and deeply human. And yet, it was possible. One crisp autumn evening, as the three of them sat around the dinner table laughing over stories of the day, Ethan paused mid-sentence, looking thoughtful. "Do you think people will remember us?" he asked quietly. "Like, will they remember what happened?" The aunt reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "They'll remember the good stuff," she said. "How we stood up for what was right. How we showed the world that kindness matters." Maya nodded, smiling warmly. "And they'll remember you," she added. "Because you're brave, kiddo. Braver than most adults I know. Ethan grinned, his cheeks flushing with pride. In that moment, surrounded by love and laughter, he realized something important. The hardest battles often lead to the sweetest victories. For Maya, for the aunt, and for him, life had become a testament to the power of second chances, and to the unshakable belief that even in the darkest moments, light can find its way through. 2.5 max months had passed since the whirlwind of accusations, investigations, and revelations. Life for Maya, Ethan, and the aunt settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal, though it was anything but ordinary. Each day brought new challenges, small victories and moments of quiet reflection. What had started as a chaotic collision of lives now unfolded into something deeper, a story of healing, growth, and unlikely bonds. Maya's mornings began with sunlight streaming through the windows of the cozy guest room she called her own. For someone who once slept on park benches under harsh streetlights, waking up in a warm bed felt like a miracle every single time. She'd tiptoe downstairs to prepare breakfast, humming softly as the smell of pancakes or scrambled eggs filled the air. Ethan would soon join her, sleepy-eyed but smiling, eager to share his dreams from the night before. Their daily routines became a source of comfort. After school, they'd walk together through the neighborhood, stopping at the library, or grabbing ice cream from a local shop. Sometimes they'd sit on the porch talking about everything and nothing, Ethan sharing stories about his classmates, Maya offering wisdom gained from years of navigating life's toughest corners. He often asked her questions that caught her off guard. Did you ever think you'd have a home again? Or, what made you keep going when things got hard? Her answers were honest, sometimes raw. There were days I didn't think I could, she admitted one afternoon as they watched leaves swirl in the wind. But then I remembered something my grandma used to say, even the darkest nights end. And they do, kiddo. They really do. Ethan soaked up her words like a sponge, finding strength in them. In many ways, Maya became more than just his nanny. She was a mentor, a confidant, and even a kindred spirit. Their connection wasn't built on grand gestures, but on countless tiny moments, the kind that weave themselves into the fabric of a person's heart without them realizing it. The aunt, too, found joy in these quieter days. Though her arrival had been dramatic, a Lamborghini pulling up outside a police station, she quickly adapted to the role of caregiver. Her career as a businesswoman kept her busy, but she prioritized making time for Ethan. On weekends, they baked cookies together, danced to old-school music in the living room, or took long drives to explore nearby towns. She encouraged him to dream big, reminding him that his future was wide open. You're allowed to want things, she told him one evening after dinner. Big things, little things. It doesn't matter. Just don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't achieve. Ethan nodded, his eyes shining with determination. Having spent so much of his childhood feeling unseen, he relished this newfound sense of possibility. With the aunt's support and Maya's steady presence, he began to envision a brighter path ahead. But life wasn't without its hurdles. Adjusting to their new dynamic took effort, especially for Ethan. There were nights when memories of his stepfather crept back, leaving him restless and anxious. During those times, Maya would sit beside him, rubbing his back and whispering reassurances until sleep finally claimed him. Other days, guilt gnawed at him for feeling happy despite everything he'd been through. The aunt noticed these struggles and gently reminded him that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about learning to carry the past differently. It's okay to miss your mom, she said during one particularly tough moment. It's okay to feel angry or sad. Those feelings are part of loving someone deeply. But you're not alone anymore, sweetheart. We're here with you. Slowly, Ethan learned to embrace both the pain and the joy, understanding that they coexisted in the messy tapestry of life. He also discovered the power of forgiveness, not just for others but for himself. Letting go of shame over running away, accepting that he hadn't caused his mother's death, and trusting that he deserved love became pivotal steps in his journey. So, winter approached. Maya embarked on a new chapter of her own. Her community college classes challenged her, pushing her out of her comfort zone. At first, she doubted whether she belonged there among younger students fresh out of high school. But her professors saw potential in her, praising her insightful contributions and resilience. Fellow classmates admired her determination, often seeking her advice on assignments or personal struggles. One evening, after acing a particularly difficult exam, Maya sat in the living room surrounded by textbooks and notes. Ethan plopped down beside her, holding a mug of hot chocolate. "You're going to be amazing at helping people," he declared confidently. "Like, super-duper amazing," she laughed, ruffling his hair. "Well, I've got a pretty good teacher, showing me how it's done." Through her studies, Maya began volunteering at a local shelter, leading workshops for women transitioning out of homelessness. Sharing her experiences gave her a profound sense of purpose, knowing she could offer hope to others who felt trapped in despair. One woman, in particular, reminded her of herself, a young mother struggling to rebuild her life after escaping domestic violence. Seeing her progress week by week reinforced Maya's belief that change, though slow, was always possible. Outside their household, the ripple effects of their story continued to spread. Media outlets occasionally revisited the case, highlighting updates on Maya's achievements and Ethan's progress. Advocacy groups cited their ordeal as a call to action, urging reforms in child welfare systems and addressing biases against marginalized communities. People inspired by their resilience reached out, sending letters of encouragement or small gifts to show their support. By spring, their little family unit had blossomed into something extraordinary. A backyard garden planted by Maya and Ethan flourished with flowers and vegetables, symbolizing the growth they'd experienced together. Neighbors grew fond of them, inviting them to barbecues and block parties. Even strangers recognized Maya around town, thanking her for reminding them of the importance of compassion. On a sunny Saturday morning, the three of them gathered in the park where Maya and Ethan had first met. It was surreal to return to the place where everything had begun, a bench that held so much weight yet now felt lighter somehow. As they sat there, watching children play and dogs chase frisbees, Ethan turned to Maya with a mischievous grin. "Remember when everyone thought, 'You kidnapped me?'" She chuckled, shaking her head. "How could I forget? That was some drama." He leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "I still think you're cooler than any superhero." The aunt laughed, wrapping an arm around both of them. "Well, if she's a superhero, then I guess we're all part of the team." For a moment, none of them spoke. Instead, they simply basked in the warmth of the sun, the sound of laughter echoing around them. They weren't perfect, they never claimed to be, but they were whole. Together they had transformed pain into purpose, fear into courage, and isolation into connection. And as they walked home hand in hand, Ethan paused to look up at the sky. "Do you think the stars are watching us right now?" he asked. Maya smiled, squeezing his hand. "Always, kiddo, always." In the end, their story wasn't just about survival, it was about thriving, about finding light in unexpected places, and proving that even in the darkest moments, humanity has the power to shine through.